The iron wheels of the westbound train screeched against the rails as it slowed to a final stop at Whispering Pines Station. Eleanor Blackwood clutched her 4 sleeping children closer, their small bodies warm against the chill of the October air that seeped through the worn wooden passenger car. Outside the window, a tall man in a pressed black suit paced the platform, checking his pocket watch repeatedly, his face growing stormy with each glance. When the station master called, "Whispering Pines, final stop before Carson Junction," Eleanor gathered her meager belongings. With practiced efficiency, she woke her 4 identical 5-year-old daughters and helped them into their threadbare coats. As she stepped onto the platform with the quadruplets clustered around her skirts, the man in black stopped pacing. His eyes widened, traveling from Eleanor's face to the 4 small girls clutching her hands and dress. "Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked, his voice sharp with disbelief. "Mr. Reynolds," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm pleased to finally meet you." Thomas Reynolds took a step back, his expression shifting from shock to anger. This is not what was agreed upon. Your letters never mentioned children." 4 children, Eleanor felt her heart sink as she watched her carefully constructed future begin to crumble before her eyes. She reached instinctively for the medicine pouch hidden in her pocket, the last gift from her grandmother, before squaring her shoulders to face the man who had promised to be her husband. Across the platform, a tall figure watched the exchange with interest. The afternoon sun glinted off the silver and turquoise adorning his buckskin jacket as he stepped forward, his dark eyes fixed on the small medicine pouch now visible in Eleanor's trembling hand. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." Eleanor Blackwood had known hardship since the day she was born in a small Pennsylvania mining town in the spring of 1847. Her father, a mine worker with perpetually coal-stained hands, had died in a collapse when she was just 13. Her mother, determined to give her only child a better future, had scrimped and saved to send Eleanor to school, where she discovered an affinity for botany and medicine. By 20, Eleanor had become the town's unofficial healer, combining her grandmother's traditional remedies with modern medical knowledge gleaned from books she ordered with precious saved pennies. The miners and their families paid her in vegetables, mended clothes, and occasionally a few coins, enough to survive, but never to thrive. Then came the winter of 1872, when influenza swept through the mining camp with devastating efficiency. Eleanor worked tirelessly, moving from cabin to cabin with her pouches of herbs and tinctures. She saved many, but not her mother, who slipped away on a bitter January morning, with a final whispered plea for Eleanor to find a better life. 3 months after her mother's death, Eleanor discovered she was with child, the result of a brief romance with a traveling geology professor who had promised to return but never did. When her condition became impossible to hide, the town's charity hardened into judgment. By the time she gave birth to not 1 but 4 identical daughters, Mary, Martha, Margaret, and Mercy, in the fall of 1873, even her most loyal patients had begun to seek medical attention elsewhere. For 5 years, Eleanor struggled to care for her daughters and herself. She took in mending, cleaned homes, and still offered her healing services to those willing to overlook her circumstances. But as the mining operation began to fail and families moved away, her situation grew more desperate. It was Mrs. Wilson, the shopkeeper's wife who still hired Eleanor to tend her rheumatism, who first suggested the matrimonial advertisement. "You have skills, Eleanor," Mrs. Wilson had said, pressing the catalogue into her hands, "and there are men out west who need wives with practical knowledge. They don't ask too many questions about the past if you can cook a decent meal and tend a garden." Eleanor had resisted at first, but as winter approached and her daughter's coughs echoed through their drafty one-room cabin, she finally penned her letter to the gentleman rancher seeking practical wife in the Oklahoma Territory. She described her medical knowledge, her gardening skills, her ability to run a household efficiently. She mentioned being widowed, a more acceptable fiction than the truth, but omitted any mention of her daughters, fearing it would diminish her chances of securing a favorable response. Thomas Reynolds had seemed perfect on paper. 45, established with a prosperous cattle ranch 10 miles outside of Whispering Pines, and in need of a sensible woman to bring civilization to a bachelor's home. His letters were straightforward, if not warm, discussing practical matters, like the size of his home, 8 rooms, the nearest neighbors, 3 miles, and the availability of a small surgery where Eleanor could continue her healing work for the ranch hands and neighboring homesteads. After 5 exchanges, he had sent train tickets and a brief note. "I will meet you at Whispering Pines Station on October 12th. We can be married by Judge Parker that afternoon." Now, standing on the windswept platform with Thomas Reynolds' expression shifting from disappointment to fury, Eleanor wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. 4 children, he repeated, removing his hat to run a hand through his thinning hair. "This changes everything, Mrs. Blackwood. I agreed to marry a healer, not to become father to a ready-made family of 5 mouths to feed. My daughters are well-behaved and old enough to help with light chores," Eleanor said, trying to keep desperation from her voice. "And I assure you, Mr. Reynolds, my skills as a healer are as advertised. I brought my full apothecary." "It's not a question of skills," Reynolds interrupted. "It's a matter of resources and expectations. This arrangement is no longer satisfactory." Eleanor felt little Martha's hand tighten around her skirt. Looking down, she saw fear reflected in 4 identical pairs of blue eyes. Eyes just like their father's, though the girl's had her dark hair and determined chin. "Mr. Reynolds," she began again, but he was already turning away. "I'm sorry you've had a wasted journey, Mrs. Blackwood," he said stiffly. "I'll speak to the station master about return passage to Pennsylvania. Good day." As Reynolds strode away, Eleanor fought to keep her composure. The station was nearly empty now, the other passengers long since collected by waiting family members or wagons bound for nearby farms. Only the station master remained, sweeping the platform with methodical strokes, carefully avoiding looking in her direction. Eleanor sat heavily on a bench, gathering her daughters close. "It'll be all right," she whispered, not believing her own words. Their funds were nearly depleted by preparations for this journey. A return ticket would leave them destitute upon arrival, if they could afford passage at all. "Are you hungry?" she asked, reaching for the small bundle of food she'd packed for the journey. As she unwrapped the cloth, something slipped from her pocket and clattered to the wooden platform. Her grandmother's medicine pouch, a small leather bag adorned with intricate beadwork in patterns passed down through generations. Inside were her most precious herbs and a small mortar made from riverstone. The pouch had been her grandmother's most prized possession, given to Eleanor on her deathbed, along with whispered instructions about each plant's properties. As she bent to retrieve it, a shadow fell across the platform. Looking up, Eleanor found herself staring into the deepest, most penetrating dark eyes she had ever seen. The man standing before her was tall and powerfully built, his skin burnished copper. By the sun, his black hair shot through with dignified silver at the temples. He wore a curious blend of traditional native clothing and settler garments, buckskin pants and jacket adorned with beadwork and silver, a cotton shirt beneath, and well-worn boots. Most striking was the sense of absolute authority he carried, not with arrogance, but with the easy confidence of one accustomed to being heard when he spoke. "Your medicine," he said, his voice rich and smooth as he bent to pick up the pouch before she could reach it. He studied the beadwork, with unmistakable recognition, turning it carefully in hands that bore the scars of many seasons. "The pattern is Cherokee," he continued. "Old medicine. My grandmother made pouches very similar." Eleanor found her voice. "Yes, it was my grandmother's. She learned from a Cherokee woman who saved her family during a fever outbreak near the Tennessee border." The man's expression shifted subtly as he returned the pouch to her. "I am Samuel Riverstone, chief of the Red Hawk Band of Cherokee. We have land 10 miles east of here." "Eleanor Blackwood," she replied, automatically extending her hand before wondering if the gesture would be considered appropriate. To her relief, he clasped it briefly, his palm warm and calloused against her chilled fingers. "And these are my daughters," she added, "Mary, Martha, Margaret, and Mercy." Chief Riverstone regarded the 4 identical faces with evident interest, rather than the usual shock or disapproval. "4 spirits arriving together is considered powerful medicine among my people," he said, "a sign of balance between the 4 directions." Before Eleanor could respond, little Mercy, always the boldest of the 4, stepped forward. "Mama makes medicine, too," she announced. "She fixed Mr. Holloway's leg when the wagon rolled on it, and everyone said it would need cutting off." Chief Riverstone's gaze returned to Eleanor, a new assessment in his eyes. "Is this true?" Eleanor nodded, too tired for false modesty. "I've studied both traditional remedies and modern medical texts. I was able to set the bone and create a poultice that prevented mortification. My sister's youngest has a fever that does not break," the chief said suddenly. 3 days now. Our healer has tried traditional methods without success." Eleanor hesitated only briefly. She had nothing to lose and perhaps something, shelter, food for her daughters, to gain. "I would be happy to examine the child," she offered. "Though I cannot promise a cure, I have had success with persistent fevers." Something shifted in Samuel Riverstone's expression, a decision reached after careful consideration. "Then you will come with me to our settlement," he stated rather than asked. "We have room for you and your daughters. And perhaps, Mrs. Blackwood, we may each have something the other needs." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The journey to the Cherokee settlement tested Eleanor's remaining strength. Chief Riverstone had procured a wagon from a trading post near the station, driven by a young Cherokee man named Joseph, who spoke little but observed much. The quadruplets, initially wary, soon fell asleep in the wagon bed, lulled by exhaustion and the steady rhythm of the wheels over the Oklahoma plains. As they traveled east, Eleanor took in the landscape, so different from Pennsylvania's dense forests and rolling hills. Here the land stretched toward the horizon in waves of autumn golden grass, punctuated by stands of oak and hickory trees whose leaves blazed orange and crimson in the late afternoon light. In the distance, low mountains rose like sentinels against the gathering twilight. "Your land is beautiful," she said, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Chief Riverstone glanced at her. "It is not the land of my ancestors," he replied. "That place lies far to the east, in what your people call the Carolinas and Georgia. This is where we were sent after the Trail of Tears." Eleanor nodded, recognizing the gravity in his voice. "My grandmother spoke of it. Her teacher, the Cherokee, woman who taught her medicine, had walked that trail as a child." "Yet you carry her knowledge," Riverstone observed. "Sometimes wisdom survives what bodies cannot." As twilight deepened into dusk, the wagon crested a gentle hill, revealing the Cherokee settlement below. Unlike the crude frontier towns Eleanor had passed through on her journey west, this community showed evidence of careful planning. Sturdy cabins of squared logs lined well-defined paths, interspersed with traditional summer houses built of woven saplings, Gardens, now harvested for winter, lay in neat plots behind each dwelling. A central clearing held a larger structure, a council house, Eleanor guessed, and nearby a spring-fed stream provided water. "Welcome to Tsula Adanfdo," said Chief Riverstone. "In your language, it means fox crossing." The wagon's arrival drew curious onlookers. Children paused in their play, women appeared in doorways, and men looked up from evening tasks. Eleanor felt their gazes, not hostile but cautious, assessing the stranger and her 4 identical daughters who now stirred. Sleepily in the wagon bed, Riverstone spoke briefly in Cherokee, his words flowing with musical cadence. While Eleanor couldn't understand the language, she recognized his tone as one of explanation and reassurance. The tension in the settlement eased visibly. A woman emerged from a cabin near the council house, her face lined with worry. She hurried toward the wagon, speaking rapidly to Riverstone, her hands gesturing with maternal anxiety. Though the words were foreign, the universal language of a mother's concern needed no translation. "This is my sister, Hannah Morning Light," Riverstone explained. "Her son David is the child I spoke of. The fever has worsened." Eleanor nodded, already reaching for her medicine bag. "I'd like to see him right away." As she moved to climb down from the wagon, practical concerns intruded. "My daughters will be cared for," Riverstone assured her. "My mother, White Dove, will see to their needs." As if summoned by her name, an elderly woman appeared beside the wagon. Despite her advanced years, White Dove stood straight as a pine, her silver hair braided with intricate precision, her dark eyes sharp with intelligence. She regarded the quadruplets with undisguised fascination. "4 spirits in one birth," she said in precise English, "a powerful sign." She extended gnarled but steady hands toward the children. "Come, little ones. I have cornbread and honey waiting." To Eleanor's surprise, even shy Margaret went willingly with White Dove, sensing perhaps the grandmother's genuine warmth beneath her dignified exterior. With her children tended to, Eleanor followed Hannah Morning Light to a cabin set slightly apart from the others. Inside, the dwelling was meticulously clean, furnished with a mixture of traditional Cherokee items and objects clearly obtained through trade: a carved wooden table, rush-bottom chairs, hand-woven blankets alongside iron cookware and glass. Lanterns. On a low bed in the corner lay a boy of perhaps 7 years. Even in the lantern light, Eleanor could see the unnatural flush of fever on his cheeks, the perspiration dampening his dark hair, and the restless movements of discomfort. A man sat beside him, bathing the child's forehead with a cloth dipped in water. He looked up as they entered, hope and skepticism warring in his expression. "This is John Tall Pine, my brother-in-law," Riverstone explained. "Hannah's husband and David's father." Eleanor approached the bed, setting her medicine bag beside it and kneeling to examine the child. "How long has he been ill?" she asked, her voice shifting to the professional tone she used with patience. 5 days, Hannah answered, hovering anxiously. "It began with a cough and headache. Then came the fever that will not break, no matter what remedies we try." Eleanor placed a gentle hand on David's forehead, feeling the dangerous heat radiating from his skin. She checked his pulse, too rapid, and carefully examined his throat, which appeared inflamed. When she pressed lightly on his abdomen, the boy winced, even in his semi-conscious state. "Has he complained of pain in his stomach, or shown any rash on his skin?" John Tall Pine nodded. "Yesterday he said his belly hurt, and there are spots here." He pulled back the blanket to reveal small red marks scattered across the boy's chest. Eleanor's mind worked quickly, cataloguing symptoms against the medical texts she had studied so diligently. This was not simple. Influenza or childhood croup. The pattern of fever, abdominal pain and rash suggested typhoid, a serious diagnosis, but one she had treated before during an outbreak in the mining town 3 years prior. "I believe this is typhoid fever," she said carefully. "It's caused by contaminated water or food and can spread if we're not cautious." Hannah gasped softly, clearly recognizing the dangerous diagnosis. "Can you help him?" Eleanor met the mother's gaze directly. "I've treated this illness before, with some success. But I must be honest, it's serious, especially in children. We must work quickly." From her medicine bag, Eleanor withdrew small packets of herbs and powders, explaining as she worked. "This is willow bark for the fever, echinacea to strengthen his body's fight against the sickness, golden seal for the inflammation." She hesitated before adding, "I also have some medicines from the pharmacist, quinine and a small amount of chloral. Hydrate to help him rest. Together these might help, but the most important treatment is clean water, broth, and careful nursing." To Eleanor's relief, neither Hannah nor John objected to her methods or questioned her knowledge. Instead, they moved with quiet efficiency to carry out her instructions, Hannah setting water to boil for the medicinal tea, John supporting his son's head as Eleanor administered the first doses. As they worked, Eleanor became aware of Chief Riverstone watching from the doorway. His expression remained unreadable, but his eyes missed nothing. For the next 2 hours, Eleanor focused entirely on young David, preparing medicines, showing Hannah how to administer them, and bathing the boy with tepid water to help lower his fever. The child remained dangerously hot, his breathing rapid and shallow, but by the time the village had settled into night stillness, Eleanor felt a slight, very slight, improvement in his condition. "The medicine is beginning its work," she told the anxious parents, "but this battle has just begun. The next 2 days will determine the outcome." Hannah, exhaustion etched on her face, clasped Eleanor's hand. "Thank you for coming to us. Whatever happens, we are grateful." Eleanor squeezed her hand in return. "I'll return at first light to check on him and prepare more medicine. For now, continue with the cooling baths if his fever rises again, and give him small sips of the broth whenever he wakes." Outside the cabin, the night air felt cool against Eleanor's flushed face. Stars crowded the sky in numbers she had never seen in Pennsylvania, their light casting silver shadows across the settlement. Chief Riverstone materialized beside her, silent as a nightbird. "You are skilled," he said simply. "Hannah has hope again." "The danger isn't past," Eleanor cautioned. "And there's another concern. Typhoid can spread through water. We should check your spring and warn everyone to boil drinking water until we're certain of the source." Riverstone nodded. "I will announce this at tomorrow's council. For tonight, you need rest." He gestured toward a cabin near White Dove's dwelling. "Your daughters are already sleeping. You will stay here." It wasn't a question, but neither was it a command, simply an acknowledgement of reality. Eleanor had nowhere else to go, and a sick child needed her attention. For tonight at least, decisions about the future could wait. "Thank you," she said, "for your trust and for caring for my girls." Riverstone studied her for a moment, his expression softening slightly. 4 spirits arriving together is a blessing that demands respect, and one who carries healing in her hands is never truly without a home among my people. As he turned to leave, Eleanor called after him, "Chief Riverstone?" He paused, looking back. "Why did you really bring me here? There must be other healers." "Closer than the train station." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Our healer, Spotted Fawn, is skilled in traditional ways, but some sicknesses require new medicines. I went to Whispering Pines to seek the doctor who visits monthly, but he had not arrived." His gaze held hers steadily. "Instead, I found you with a Cherokee medicine pouch, rejected by a man too foolish to see your value." With that, he disappeared. into the darkness, leaving Eleanor to ponder the strange turns of fate that had brought her here, and to wonder what tomorrow would bring for both young David and her own uncertain future. Dawn broke over Fox Crossing in ribbons of pink and gold. Eleanor woke to unfamiliar sounds, children's laughter, the rhythmic thud of corn being ground, and the melodic calls of birds she couldn't name. For a moment, disorientation gripped her before memory returned. She glanced around the small cabin, where she and her daughters had spent the night. The space was simple, but thoughtfully prepared. 4 small pallets had been arranged for the Quadruplets, who still slept soundly after their exhausting journey. A larger bed had been made for Eleanor, covered with a beautifully woven blanket in patterns of red and black. A small fire smouldered in the central hearth, keeping the autumn chill at bay. Eleanor rose quietly, careful not to wake her daughters. Outside, the settlement was already active despite the early hour. Women moved between cabins carrying baskets of food or bundles of firewood. Men gathered near the council house, their voices low as they discussed matters Eleanor couldn't discern. "Your daughters sleep like bear cubs in winter," came a voice behind her. Eleanor turned to find White Dove approaching, carrying a clay pot that steamed in the cool morning air. "They were exhausted," Eleanor replied. "Thank you for making us comfortable." White Dove handed her the pot. "Wild cherry tea, good for strength." Her sharp eyes assessed Eleanor. "You will need it. The boy is no better." Alarmed, Eleanor accepted the tea gratefully. "I should go to him right away." "Drink first," White Dove instructed firmly. "Healers who neglect themselves have short careers." Eleanor obeyed, finding the tea surprisingly sweet with an underlying tartness that refreshed her tired mind. As she drank, White Dove continued, "Your little ones will be safe with me. The women are curious about them. 4 spirits in one birth is rare among any people." "They've always attracted attention," Eleanor admitted, though not always kindly. White Dove's weathered face creased in understanding. "Your people can be cruel to what they don't understand. 4 is a sacred number to us. The 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 stages of life. Your daughters will find welcome here." Before Eleanor could respond, Hannah appeared, her face drawn with a night's vigil. "Eleanor, please. David's fever grows worse." Passing the empty cup back to White Dove with a grateful nod, Eleanor grabbed her medicine bag and followed Hannah to her cabin. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with fear. John Tall Pine sat beside his son, his stoic expression belied by the tension in his shoulders. The boy lay motionless, except for the rapid rise and fall of his chest, his skin flushed an alarming shade of red. Eleanor moved quickly to David's side, assessing his condition with practiced hands. The fever had indeed spiked dangerously higher. The rash had spread, and when she gently pressed on his abdomen, the child moaned in pain even through his delirium. "I need to prepare a stronger medicine," she said, not bothering to hide her concern, "and we must continue the cooling baths more frequently." For the next hour, Eleanor worked steadily, brewing a more potent fever remedy and instructing Hannah on how to apply cool compresses to the pulse points at David's wrists, neck, and temples. When the boy began to shiver violently despite his fever, Eleanor added warming herbs to a foot soak, explaining the need to draw the heat downward from his head. "This is unlike any treatment our healer uses," John observed, not critically but with cautious interest. "It combines what I learned from medical texts with my grandmother's traditional knowledge," Eleanor explained as she worked. Different traditions often arrive at similar truths through different paths. By mid-morning, a subtle change came over David. His breathing eased slightly, and the violent shivering subsided. Eleanor checked his pulse and found it stronger, though still too rapid. "The medicine is helping," she told the anxious parents, "but we're far from victory. The next day will be critical." As she spoke, a shadow darkened the doorway. Chief River, Stone entered, his commanding presence filling the small cabin. He looked first at his nephew, then at Eleanor with searching intensity. "Will he live?" he asked directly. Eleanor appreciated his straightforwardness. "If we can break the fever within the next day, yes. His body is strong and he fights hard." Riverstone nodded, accepting her assessment. "The council has met. All water is being boiled as you suggested, and the spring is being examined for possible contamination." "Good," Eleanor said. "That will help prevent further cases. Has anyone else shown similar symptoms?" 2 children have slight fevers, but nothing like David's. Spotted Fawn is watching them closely. Eleanor hesitated before offering, "I'd be happy to examine them as well, if Spotted Fawn permits." Something like approval flickered in Riverstone's expression. "She has asked to meet you. When you can leave David, she waits at the medicine lodge." This was unexpected. Eleanor had feared potential resentment from the Cherokee healer, not an invitation. "I'll go when Hannah returns from preparing more broth." As if summoned by her name, Hannah entered carrying a steaming wooden bowl. Seeing her brother, she reported, "David took water without fighting. His eyes opened briefly." "Encouraging signs," Eleanor confirmed. Riverstone spoke briefly to his sister in Cherokee, then turned back to Eleanor. "I'll escort you to Spotted Fawn when you're ready, and your daughters are asking for you. They've become the center of attention in the village." Eleanor smiled despite her fatigue. "They usually do. I'll check on them first, then meet with Spotted Fawn." Outside, the morning had warmed considerably. Eleanor blinked in the bright sunlight, allowing Riverstone to guide her toward the sound of children's laughter. They rounded a large oak tree to find a remarkable scene. Her quadruplets, usually wary of strangers, were happily engaged with a group of Cherokee children in what appeared to be a game involving colored stones and much giggling. "Martha, Mary, Margaret, Mercy," Eleanor called. 4 identical heads turned simultaneously, and 4 identical smiles bloomed at the sight of their mother. They ran to her, chattering excitedly. "Mama, we're learning Cherokee words. Mrs. White Dove gave us cornbread with honey. They don't make us say which one is which. Can we stay here forever?" This last question, from Mercy, caused Eleanor to glance uncertainly at Riverstone, whose expression remained unreadable. "We'll talk about that later," she told her daughters, smoothing their dark hair. "Are you being good guests?" "The best," affirmed White Dove, who sat nearby watching the children play. "They have quick minds and careful hands. Mercy helped me string beads this morning. Her fingers are nimble." Eleanor's heart warmed at the genuine praise. "Thank you for watching them. I need to meet with Spotted Fawn now, but I'll return soon." "They are no burden," White Dove assured her. "Go tend to your healer's business." With a final embrace for each daughter, Eleanor followed Riverstone toward a structure set slightly apart from the other buildings. Unlike the squared log cabins, this building was circular, its walls made of saplings bent into a dome and covered with bark and woven nuts. Smoke curled from an opening at the top, carrying a complex fragrance of herbs and resins. "The medicine lodge," Riverstone explained, "sacred space for healing and ceremony." Before they reached it, a woman emerged. She was perhaps 40, with a dignified bearing and penetrating eyes that immediately assessed Eleanor from head to toe. Her hair, streaked with premature silver, was braided with small shells and beads that clicked softly when she moved. She wore a dress of soft buckskin adorned with intricate beadwork, and around her neck hung numerous pouches similar to Eleanor's own medicine bag. "Spotted Fawn," Riverstone said by way of introduction. "This is Eleanor Blackwood, the healer, who tends David." The 2 women regarded each other with professional curiosity rather than hostility. After a moment, Spotted Fawn spoke in clear, accented English. "You carry old knowledge in new hands," she observed. "Your grandmother's teacher, she was Cherokee." Eleanor nodded. "From the Eastern Band, forced west on the Trail of Tears. Her name was Willow Branch." Spotted Fawn's eyes widened slightly. Willow Branch was my mother's cousin. She was thought lost during the removal. A smile transformed her serious face. So the medicine returns to us. This is good. With that simple declaration, the potential tension between competing healers dissolved. Spotted Fawn gestured for Eleanor to enter the medicine lodge. Come, show me what you have learned and taught. Perhaps together we can save more than one child. As Eleanor ducked through the low entrance, she felt the weight of judgment lift from her shoulders. Here, her knowledge was valued. Her daughters were welcomed, and her presence was not a scandal, but a potential blessing. For the first time since arriving in Oklahoma Territory, she allowed herself to consider that Thomas Reynolds' rejection might have been not a disaster, but a deliverance. Inside the medicine lodge, the air was warm and fragrant, with drying herbs hanging from the framework. A central fire pit contained glowing coals, and shelves lined the walls, holding clay pots, wooden boxes, and bundles of plants. Spotted Fawn indicated a woven mat where Eleanor should sit. Now, the Cherokee healer said, settling across from her, tell me of David's sickness and your remedies, and I will tell you of our ways. Between us, perhaps we will find wisdom greater than either possesses alone. As the two women began to share their healing knowledge outside the medicine lodge, Chief Riverstone watched with thoughtful eyes, considering the strange turns of fate that had brought this unusual family to Fox Crossing, and wondering what changes their arrival might bring to his people, his community, and perhaps to his own carefully ordered life. 3 days passed in a rhythm of healing work and cautious integration. Eleanor divided her time between tending to David, whose condition improved incrementally with each passing hour, working alongside Spotted Fawn to treat the 2 other children with milder symptoms, and caring for her daughters, who had taken to life at Fox Crossing with surprising enthusiasm. By the 3rd evening, David's fever had finally broken. Eleanor watched with profound relief as the boy opened his eyes fully for the first time, weakly reaching for the cup of broth his mother held to his lips. Hannah wept silently, while John Tallpine placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder, a gesture of gratitude that required no words. He will need time to regain his strength, Eleanor cautioned. The illness has weakened him considerably, but the worst has passed. You have given us back our son, Hannah said simply. There is no repayment sufficient for such a gift. Eleanor shook her head. Your welcome of my daughters and me is payment enough. After ensuring David would continue to improve with proper care, Eleanor left the family to their private relief and stepped into the cool evening air. The settlement had taken on a golden glow in the sunset, smoke from cooking fires rising in straight columns against the darkening sky. She paused, absorbing the scene with a sense of unreality. Just 4 days ago, she had stepped off a train expecting to meet her future husband. Now, she found herself integrated into a community she had never imagined joining. Your medicine has worked well, came Chief Riverstone's voice behind her. Eleanor turned to find him approaching, his tall figure silhouetted against the sunset. It was a combination of approaches, she replied honestly. Spotted Fawn's knowledge of local plants strengthened my remedies considerably. He nodded, gesturing for her to walk with him. She speaks highly of your skills, says you have good hands and a listening mind. High praise from her. They strolled toward the central clearing, where children were finishing their evening games before bedtime. Eleanor spotted her daughters among them, their identical faces flushed with exertion and happiness as they participated in what appeared to be a variation of hide-and-seek. They have adapted quickly, Riverstone observed, following her gaze. Children often do, Eleanor said, though mine have surprised me. They've always been wary of strangers, Having faced unkindness in our town, Riverstone's expression darkened slightly. Your people judge harshly what they do not understand. Some do, Eleanor agreed. Though not all. My grandmother taught me to look for goodness in unexpected places. They watched the children play in companionable silence for a moment. Then Riverstone spoke again, his tone carefully neutral. What are your plans now, Eleanor Blackwood? Will you seek another husband through these mail advertisements? The question caught her off guard, though she had been considering the same matter privately. I don't think so, she admitted. I came west, seeking security for my daughters, but I've begun to wonder if that was the right path. And what do you think now? Eleanor considered her answer carefully. I think perhaps I was too focused on finding someone to take care of us, when what I really needed was a place where my skills are valued and my children accepted. Chief Riverstone nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. The council has discussed your situation, he said. We would like to offer you a more permanent arrangement. Eleanor's heart quickened. What sort of arrangement? Fox Crossing has lacked a healer who understands white medicines. Spotted Fawn is skilled in our traditional ways, but as David's illness showed, sometimes both approaches are needed. He gestured toward a small cabin near the medicine lodge. This could be yours, expanded for your daughters if you choose to stay. You would work alongside Spotted Fawn, learning from each other, serving both our people and settlers who seek help. The offer stunned Eleanor with its generosity and practicality. Your people would accept us permanently? A white woman and her children? Riverstone's expression remained serious. Not without challenges. Some elders have concerns about preserving our ways, and there will be those from outside who question your presence here. His gaze met hers directly. It would not be an easy path, but few worthwhile journeys are. Before Eleanor could respond, a commotion at the edge of the settlement caught their attention. Joseph, the young man who had driven them from the station, was riding hard into the clearing, his expression urgent. He reined his horse to a stop near Riverstone, speaking rapidly in Cherokee. The chief's face hardened as he listened. He replied with brief instructions, then turned to Eleanor. There is trouble, he said grimly. Thomas Reynolds has gone to the Indian agent at Fort Gibson, claiming we are holding you and your daughters against your will. A patrol has been dispatched to rescue you. Fear gripped Eleanor's heart. But that's absurd. He rejected us at the station. We came here willingly. Truth matters little when pride is wounded, Riverstone replied. Reynolds is an influential man in the territory. His word carries weight with authorities. What will happen? Eleanor asked, already gathering her daughters with her eyes, instinctively preparing to protect them. The patrol will arrive by midday tomorrow. 10 soldiers, according to Joseph. Riverstone's expression was carefully controlled, but Eleanor sensed the tension beneath his calm exterior. If they believe we've abducted white settlers, it could go badly for Fox Crossing. Eleanor straightened her shoulders, anger replacing fear. Then I'll tell them the truth. Reynolds abandoned us without resources. You offered shelter and the opportunity to use my skills. We are here by choice. It may not be that simple, Riverstone warned. The Indian agent has been looking for reasons to restrict our movements further, to confine us to the reservation boundaries. This could provide the excuse he seeks. A new voice joined their conversation. Then we must give them no excuse. Spotted Fawn approached, her expression resolute. The white woman and her children must appear well treated and free to leave if they wish. Everything must be beyond criticism when the soldiers arrive. Riverstone nodded in agreement. Eleanor should be prepared to demonstrate her healing work. The fact that she saved David's life will count in our favor. Eleanor listened to their strategic planning with growing determination. I won't let Reynolds use me as a weapon against people who have shown nothing but kindness to my family. As darkness settled fully over Fox Crossing, the council gathered to discuss their response to the coming confrontation. Eleanor sat among them at Riverstone's invitation, an unusual honor for an outsider, and a woman at that. Her daughters had been settled in their cabin under White Dove's watchful care, blissfully unaware of the threat looming over their new home. The council members, 7 men and 3 women of varying ages, sat in a circle within the council house. A central fire provided both warmth and symbolic focus as each person spoke in turn, offering their perspective on the situation and potential responses. Eleanor understood little of what was said in Cherokee, but Riverstone translated the key points. Dancing Bear believes we should send you to meet the soldiers outside our boundaries, he explained, after one elder had spoken at length, to show you are free to come and go. Whereas Tall Oak thinks you should be busy treating patients when they arrive, he added after another speaker, to demonstrate your purpose here. The discussions continued, some voices heated, others measured. Throughout it all, Eleanor was struck by the deliberative process, each perspective heard, none dismissed without consideration, the good of the community placed above individual preferences. Finally, it was her turn to speak. She rose, conscious of all eyes upon her. I am grateful for your welcome and protection, she began carefully. My daughters and I came here by choice, and wish to stay by choice. I will make that clear to any who question it. She took a deep breath before continuing. But I will not be the cause of trouble for people who helped us when we had nowhere else to turn. If my presence here threatens Fox Crossing, we will leave. Riverstone translated her words, which were met with murmurs of approval. The oldest council member, a man whose wrinkled face testified to decades of hardship and wisdom, spoke briefly in response. Grey Wolf says your spirit honors your grandmother's teaching, Riverstone translated. He says a woman who places the welfare of others above her own comfort belongs among us, regardless of the color of her skin. The council continued deliberating late into the night, finally reaching consensus on how to receive the approaching patrol. As the meeting concluded, Eleanor felt a strange mixture of anxiety and resolve. She had come west seeking security through marriage to a stranger. Instead, she found herself standing with a community against external threats, defending not just her own choices, but their right to accept her on their terms. Walking back to her cabin under a canopy of stars, Eleanor was joined by Riverstone. Neither spoke for several minutes, the weight of tomorrow's confrontation heavy between them. Finally, Riverstone broke the silence. Whatever happens tomorrow, you have acted with courage. Your grandmother would be proud. The simple statement touched Eleanor deeply. I hope so, she whispered. She taught me that true healing isn't just about curing the body, but about mending broken connections between people, between traditions, between past and future. Riverstone stopped walking, turning to face her fully in the starlight. That is Cherokee wisdom speaking through your words, he said softly. Perhaps your presence here is part of a pattern larger than any of us can see clearly. As she looked up at him, Eleanor felt a connection forming that transcended their differences, a recognition of shared values and complementary strengths. Before she could respond, however, the moment was interrupted by Mary calling from the cabin doorway, her small voice carrying in the night stillness. Mama, is everything all right? Yes, sweetheart, Eleanor replied, the spell broken. I'm coming now. Riverstone stepped back, his expression once again composed and unreadable. Rest well, Eleanor Blackwood. Tomorrow will require all our strength. As he walked away, Eleanor watched his retreating figure with the unsettling realization that in just a few short days, the welfare of this proud, complex man and his community had become inexplicably entwined with her own. Tomorrow's confrontation would test not just her resolve to forge a new path, but the bonds of trust only beginning to form between them. Morning arrived with a tension that hung over Fox Crossing like storm clouds. Eleanor woke before dawn, her mind crowded with preparations for the soldiers' arrival. After checking on her still sleeping daughters, she slipped out to visit David, finding him markedly improved, weak but alert, the dangerous fever now just a memory. He asked for food this morning, Hannah reported with quiet joy. Real food, not just broth. An excellent sign, Eleanor confirmed. His body is ready to rebuild its strength. As she finished examining the boy, Spotted Fawn appeared in the doorway. The council's plan is set, she said without preamble. When the soldiers arrive, you will be here, tending patients. I will work alongside you. We must appear as equals, partners in healing. Eleanor nodded, understanding the strategy. And my daughters, with White Dove learning basket weaving, a normal day's activity, nothing that suggests captivity or distress. Spotted Fawn's expression softened slightly. Riverstone has gone to meet the patrol at the territorial boundary. He hopes to explain matters before they reach the settlement. After a simple breakfast, Eleanor helped Spotted Fawn prepare the medicine lodge for the day's work. Together, they organized herbs, mixed tinctures, and arranged the space to demonstrate their collaborative approach to healing. 3 patients were scheduled to visit, an elder with joint pain, a young woman expecting her first child, and a man with a persistent cough. We will show them that you practice your healing arts freely here, Spotted Fawn explained as they worked, that you are valued for your knowledge, not held against your will. By mid-morning, word reached them that the patrol had been spotted approaching from the west. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she measured dried echinacea into a small pouch, but she steadied herself with deep breaths. You fear these soldiers? Spotted Fawn asked, observing her reaction. Not the soldiers themselves, Eleanor admitted, but what they represent. In Pennsylvania, officials took children from women they deemed unfit. Unmarried mothers, the poor, those who didn't conform to expectations. I lived in constant fear they would decide 4 children were too many for a woman alone. Spotted Fawn's face darkened with understanding. We know this fear well. The government has taken many Cherokee children to boarding schools where they cut their hair, changed their names, forbid our language. The shared vulnerability created a deeper bond between the 2 healers. We won't let them take your daughters, Spotted Fawn promised, a fierce protectiveness in her voice. They belong here now. Their first patient arrived soon after, Gray. Wolf, the eldest council member, who suffered from painful swelling in his hands. As Eleanor demonstrated her knowledge of willow bark preparations, while Spotted Fawn applied a poultice of local plants, they fell into a natural rhythm that spoke of mutual respect rather than one commanding the other. The expected confrontation arrived with less warning than anticipated. Eleanor was explaining the benefits of red clover to the pregnant young woman when shadows darkened the medicine lodge entrance. Turning, she found herself facing 3 blue-uniformed soldiers, their expressions a mixture of suspicion and confusion. Between them stood Thomas Reynolds, his face flushed with what might have been embarrassment or anger. Behind this group, Riverstone watched with carefully controlled tension, his posture alert but deliberately non-threatening. Mrs. Blackwood, the soldier in front, a lieutenant by his insignia, stepped forward. I'm Lieutenant James Wilson, 7th Cavalry. We've come in response to reports of your abduction. Before Eleanor could respond, Reynolds pushed forward. There's no need to question her here, he said sharply. These savages have obviously coached her on what to say. We should remove her and the children immediately. Eleanor felt a surge of indignation at his presumption. Rising to her full height, she addressed the lieutenant directly, ignoring Reynolds entirely. "Lieutenant Wilson, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you it's misplaced. My daughters and I are here by choice, not coercion." She gestured to Spotted Fawn and the pregnant woman. "As you can see, I'm practicing my profession as a healer, working alongside the Cherokee medicine woman to serve this community." The lieutenant assessed the scene, clearly noting Eleanor's clean appearance, free movement, and the respectful distance maintained by the Cherokee present. "Mr. Reynolds claims you were stranded at Whispering Pine Station after a misunderstanding, and that these Indians took advantage of your vulnerable position." Reynolds' face reddened further at the diplomatic description of his rejection. "It was more than a misunderstanding," he blustered. "She misrepresented herself in our correspondence, never mentioning the 4 children. But that doesn't justify her being taken by—" "I was not taken," Eleanor interrupted firmly. "When Mr. Reynolds made it clear that my daughters and I were unwelcome, Chief Riverstone offered us shelter and a place where my healing skills could be put to use." She met the lieutenant's gaze directly. "We accepted freely, and have been treated with nothing but kindness and respect." The lieutenant frowned slightly, glancing between Eleanor and Reynolds. "The children, where are they? We need to confirm their welfare." "Of course," Eleanor agreed. "They're with the chief's mother, learning traditional crafts. I'd be happy to take you to them." As they exited the medicine lodge, Riverstone fell into step beside Eleanor, his presence reassuring despite his silence. The small procession made its way to White Dove's cabin, where the quadruplets were indeed engaged in basket weaving, their small fingers carefully following the elder's instructions. At the sight of the soldiers, the girls looked up with momentary alarm but quickly relaxed when they saw Eleanor. "Mama," Mercy called, "look at my basket." The 4 identical little girls, clean, well-fed, and obviously content, presented a powerful visual argument against Reynolds' claims. Lieutenant Wilson's skeptical expression softened visibly as he watched the children proudly showing Eleanor. "Their handiwork. These are your daughters, Mrs. Blackwood?" the lieutenant asked. "Yes, my quadruplets, Mary, Martha, Margaret, and Mercy." "Quadruplets?" one of the other soldiers whispered, crossing himself reflexively. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "The point remains that they don't belong here, living among Indians. It's not natural, not proper." Lieutenant Wilson studied the scene thoughtfully. "Mrs. Blackwood, may I speak with you privately?" Eleanor nodded, instructing her daughters to continue their lesson. She followed the lieutenant a short distance away, aware of both Riverstone's and Reynolds's eyes following them. "Ma'am, I need you to be completely honest," Wilson said in a low voice. "Are you under any form of duress? Do you wish to leave, but feel unable to say so in their presence?" "No, Lieutenant," Eleanor replied without hesitation. "When Mr. Reynolds abandoned us at the station, Chief Riverstone recognized my medicine pouch as similar to those used by Cherokee healers. He brought us here because his nephew was gravely ill with typhoid fever. The boy would have died without treatment." She straightened her shoulders. "I've been offered a permanent position here, working alongside Spotted Fawn, combining our different healing traditions. My daughters are safer and happier than they've ever been." Wilson studied her face, apparently searching for signs of fear or coercion. Finding none, he sighed. "Mr. Reynolds has considerable influence in the territory. He's filed a formal complaint with the Indian agent. Based on wounded pride, not fact," Eleanor countered. "He found the idea of 4 ready-made children, too. Burdensome for his bachelor existence. That was his right, but he has no claim on us now." The lieutenant rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Living among the Cherokee is an unusual choice for a white woman. There will be talk." Eleanor smiled thinly. "Lieutenant, I was an unmarried mother of quadruplets in a Pennsylvania mining town. I'm well accustomed to talk." Her candor seemed to surprise him, then draw a reluctant smile. "Fair point, ma'am." He glanced back toward the cabin where Reynolds stood fuming. "The man seems determined." "Thomas Reynolds wants his pride restored, not me," Eleanor said firmly. "He's embarrassed that the woman he rejected found acceptance elsewhere, particularly among people he considers beneath him." Wilson nodded slowly. "I'll need statements from you and the chief for the official report. But based on what I've seen, there's no evidence of abduction or coercion." As they rejoined the group, Reynolds immediately protested. "You can't seriously be considering leaving her here. Think of your duty to protect white settlers." "Mr. Reynolds," the lieutenant replied evenly, "my duty is to uphold the law, not your expectations. Mrs. Blackwood and her children appear safe, well cared for, and present by choice. I see no legal grounds for removing them against their will." Reynolds' face contorted with anger. "This is outrageous. I'll take this to the territorial governor. Riverstone and his people have no right to harbor white women, turning them against their own kind." At this, Riverstone finally broke his silence. "Mrs. Blackwood makes her own choices," he said, his deep voice carrying quiet authority. "As does any free person. She offers healing to our community, and we offer her a place where her skills and her children are valued." His gaze shifted to Reynolds, carrying unmistakable judgment. "Something you were unwilling to do." The rancher sputtered, his hand moving instinctively toward his belt, where Eleanor noticed with alarm he carried a pistol. The soldiers tensed, hands shifting to their own weapons. Into this dangerous moment stepped White Dove, her elderly frame somehow imposing as she emerged from the cabin with the quadruplets clustered behind her. "These children have known more peace in 4 days here than in all their years among your people," she stated in clear English, addressing Reynolds directly. "Would you bring violence before their eyes to satisfy your wounded pride?" The simple question, delivered with the moral authority of age and wisdom, seemed to deflate Reynolds' anger. His hand fell away from his weapon, and his eyes dropped. Unable to meet the elder's steady gaze, Lieutenant Wilson seized the moment. "My report will state that Mrs. Blackwood and her daughters are here voluntarily. Mr. Reynolds, I suggest you accept that your arrangement with the lady has ended and return to your ranch." He turned to Riverstone. "Chief, we'll need those statements before we depart." As Reynolds stalked away toward the horses, trailed by one of the soldiers, Eleanor felt the tension in her body begin to ease. The immediate threat had passed, though. She harbored no illusions that Reynolds would easily abandon his grievance. Riverstone stepped closer, speaking quietly. "You spoke well. Your words carried truth that even soldiers could recognize." "Thank you for standing with me," Eleanor replied. "For all of us." A rare smile briefly transformed his stern features. "Among Cherokee, we say that those who stand together cannot be broken apart easily. Today, you stood with us as much as we stood with you." As the soldiers prepared to depart, Eleanor watched her daughters return to White Dove's side, chattering excitedly about finishing their baskets. In just a few days, they had found a sense of belonging that had eluded them in Pennsylvania. Whether that belonging would withstand further challenges remained to be seen, but for now, Eleanor allowed herself to feel cautious hope. The confrontation had ended without violence, but as Riverstone's expression suggested, this was likely just the first of many tests they would face together. The weeks following the soldiers' visit brought a mellower rhythm to life at Fox Crossing. October gave way to November, painting the surrounding hills with burnished gold and russet. The Cherokee settlement prepared for winter with methodical efficiency. Smokehouses filled with venison and wild turkey, root cellars stocked with squash and potatoes, corn stored in carefully constructed cribs. Eleanor and her daughters settled, into a cabin that the community had expanded for them, adding a sleeping area for the quadruplets and a covered porch where Eleanor could dry her medicinal herbs. The interior walls now displayed a mixture of her grandmother's remedies and new Cherokee medicines, symbolic of the blended healing practice she was developing with Spotted Fawn. The children thrived in their new environment. They attended lessons with the Cherokee children, learning both English and Cherokee words under the patient tutelage of Hannah, who had once taught at a mission school. Their natural mimicry made them quick studies of the language, often absorbing phrases faster than Eleanor herself. "Your girls have Cherokee spirits in white bodies," White Dove observed one evening as she taught Eleanor to weave a traditional food basket. "They move between worlds without fear." Eleanor smiled, watching her daughters playing a stick and hoop game with David, now fully recovered, and several other children. "They've never belonged anywhere before," she said softly. "In Pennsylvania, they were oddities, objects of suspicion or unwelcome curiosity. 4 is sacred," White Dove repeated her earlier wisdom. "The Creator sent them together for a reason." She paused in her weaving, fixing Eleanor with her penetrating gaze. "Just as you were sent to us for a reason." Before Eleanor could respond to this mystical assertion, Riverstone approached their work area. In recent weeks, he had made a habit of seeking Eleanor out in the evenings, sometimes to discuss settlement business that might affect her healing work, but increasingly to simply share thoughts about books they had both read or Cherokee traditions he thought might interest her. "The council meeting has ended," he announced, settling beside them on a carved wooden bench. "We've received word from the Indian agent." Eleanor's hands stilled on her half-finished basket, her heart quickening. "About Reynolds' complaint?" Riverstone nodded, his expression revealing nothing. "The agent has determined there is insufficient evidence of wrongdoing on our part. Your statement and Lieutenant Wilson's report were persuasive." Relief coursed through Eleanor. "So the matter is settled?" "Officially, yes." Riverstone's tone suggested caution. "Unofficially, Reynolds continues to speak against your presence here to anyone who will listen. He has powerful friends among the territorial authorities," White Dove snorted dismissively. "That man's pride is too big for his spirit." Riverstone's lips quirked in a rare smile at his mother's assessment. "True, but wounded pride can be dangerous when combined with influence." Eleanor considered this worrying information. "What does the council recommend?" "For now, caution when traveling beyond our boundaries. You should not go to Whispering Pines or other settlements alone." His gaze moved to the quadruplets. "And the children should remain within Fox Crossing until tensions ease." The protective suggestion made sense, even as it chafed against Eleanor's independent nature. "I have little reason to leave anyway," she conceded. "Everything we need is here." White Dove excused herself with a knowing look between her son and Eleanor, a look that Eleanor pretended not to notice, though warmth crept into her cheeks. The elder departed. Riverstone moved closer on the bench. "There is another matter the council discussed," he said, his tone shifting to something more personal. "A question about winter preparations." "Oh?" Eleanor responded, resuming her basket. Weaving to steady her hands. "The cabin you occupy. It's well built, but designed for summer use originally. The winters here can be harsh, with winds that cut through even the sturdiest walls." He paused, seeming uncharacteristically hesitant. "The council believes, I believe, you and your daughters would be more comfortable in a dwelling designed for the cold months." Eleanor looked up, surprised. "Are you suggesting we move again?" "Not exactly," Riverstone said carefully. "My home was built in the old way, with double walls packed with river clay for insulation. It has multiple rooms, a central hearth that holds heat through the night, and space that currently sits empty." He met her gaze directly. "The council suggests a practical arrangement, that you and your daughters share my dwelling through winter." The proposal hung in the air between them, its implications extending beyond mere practicality. Among both white settlers and Cherokee, unmarried men and women did not typically share living quarters without causing significant scandal. As guests? Eleanor asked, seeking clarification. Riverstone held her gaze steadily. Initially, yes, but there is another possibility the council has approved, if you would consider it. He took a deep breath. Among Cherokee, when a widow with children and a widower join households, a period of living under one roof often precedes a formal union. It allows the children to adjust and the adults to confirm their compatibility before final commitments. A maid, Eleanor's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. Are you proposing marriage? I am proposing consideration, he clarified gently. You came west seeking a husband sight unseen. I would not ask you to make a similar leap now, especially given all that has happened. His expression softened slightly. But I would ask you to consider whether such an arrangement might eventually be welcome. Eleanor set her basket aside, her hands no longer steady enough for the intricate work. Riverstone, Samuel, though she had never presumed to use his first name, was offering something she had never expected. Not a marriage of convenience with a stranger, but the possibility of a union built on growing respect and shared purpose. Your people would accept such a match, she asked, practical concerns intruding despite the emotion of the moment. A white woman married to their chief? It would not be without precedent, he replied. Many Cherokee families include white ancestors. What matters is not the color of one's skin, but the nature of one's heart. He smiled slightly. And your heart has proven itself worthy of consideration, Eleanor Blackwood. The use of her name, spoken with such quiet significance, touched something deep within her. Yet caution held her back from an immediate answer. And my daughters, they would become Cherokee, he finished simply. My daughters in name, spirit and tribal standing, with all the protection and privileges that entails. The magnitude of what he offered took her breath away. Not merely shelter for the winter or personal companionship, but legitimate standing for her children within a community that valued them. I would need to speak with them, she said finally. They're young, but this decision affects their lives. Profoundly, Riverstone nodded approval in his expression. Of course, a good mother consults her children before changing their path. He rose from the bench. Take whatever time you need. The offer remains open. As he turned to leave, Eleanor called after him. Samuel? He paused, surprise flickering across his features at her use of his given name. Thank you, she said simply. Not for the offer itself, though it honors me deeply, but for allowing me time to consider it properly. My hasty correspondence with Thomas Reynolds taught me the danger of rushed decisions. The smile that transformed his stern features was, like sunrise breaking over the hills, the Cherokee way values thoughtful consideration. It is one of many things we might teach each other, Eleanor, should you choose this path. After he departed, Eleanor remained on the bench, watching her daughters play as twilight deepened around Fox Crossing. The choice before her was momentous, not just practical shelter for winter, but a complete transformation of her children's future and her own. That night, after settling the quadruplets to sleep, she sat by the hearth fire, contemplating the unexpected turn her life had taken. When she'd boarded the train west, she had imagined herself becoming the wife of a prosperous rancher, accepted, if not embraced by society, providing her daughters with security and respectability according to white settlers' standards. Now, she faced the possibility of becoming the wife of a Cherokee chief, fully integrated into a culture not her own, raising her children with traditions that would set them apart from the white world forever. It was a path that offered belonging and purpose, but also one that might never be understood or accepted by the world she had left behind. A soft knock on her door interrupted these reflections. Expecting Riverstone, she was surprised to find Spotted Fawn standing outside, a small bundle in her hands. "May I enter?" the healer asked. "There are things that should be spoken between women alone." Eleanor welcomed her in, curious about this unexpected visit. Spotted Fawn settled by the fire, unwrapping her bundle to reveal several small pouches of herbs and a carved wooden box. "Riverstone has spoken to the council of his intentions," she said without preamble. "I come not as your healing partner, but as a Cherokee woman who understands what you must be feeling." "I'm uncertain," Eleanor admitted, grateful for the older woman's directness. "Not about Samuel himself. He has shown himself to be honorable and kind. But about whether I belong in such a role, whether my daughters and I would truly be accepted." Spotted Fawn nodded, understanding in her eyes. "When I was young, my aunt married a white trader. Many questioned her choice on both sides. But their union brought strength to our people. New knowledge, new connections that helped us survive difficult times." She opened one of the pouches, releasing the pleasant aroma of sage and sweetgrass. "The strongest plants are those with diverse roots, drawing nourishment from different soils." The metaphor resonated with Eleanor's own thoughts on healing, how combining traditions often produced more effective remedies than either approach alone. "The children," Spotted Fawn continued, "they already walk the Cherokee path with natural ease. They would grow into strong women with feet in both worlds, a valuable perspective in changing times." "And the community," Eleanor pressed. "Would they truly accept us as family, not just useful outsiders?" Spotted Fawn's expression grew solemn. "There will always be some who resist change. But Riverstone is respected for his wisdom. If he chooses, you most will trust his judgment." She picked up the carved box. "And there is this to consider." She opened the lid to reveal a delicate necklace of turquoise, silver, and carved bone, clearly an item of significant value and meaning. This belonged to Riverstone's wife, Willow Dancer, who died giving birth to their son 5 winters ago. Spotted Fawn's voice softened with old grief. "The boy survived only a few hours, leaving Riverstone alone. Since then, he has led our people with dedication, but carried emptiness in his heart." She closed the box gently. "Until you arrived with your healing hands and your 4 bright spirits." The revelation of Riverstone's previous loss added new dimension to his offer. Eleanor understood suddenly that he too was taking a risk, opening himself to potential heartbreak by offering his home and heart to her and her daughters. "He asked me to give you this," Spotted Fawn continued, handing Eleanor the closed box. "Not as pressure to accept, but as a symbol of his serious intent. Among Cherokee, such a gift indicates that a man has considered deeply and offers not just words, but his ancestors' blessing." Eleanor accepted the box with trembling hands, overwhelmed by its significance. "Thank you for bringing this, and for your counsel." As Spotted Fawn prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "One more thing, Eleanor Blackwood. Whatever you decide, know that you have already changed Fox Crossing. Your healing knowledge has saved lives. Your courage against Reynolds showed others that not all white people view us as lesser beings." She smiled. "Some paths choose us, even when we think we are choosing them." Left alone once more, Eleanor carefully opened the box to examine the necklace within. Its craftsmanship was exquisite, the turquoise stones polished to a deep blue that reminded her of the sky above the Oklahoma plains. More than its material value, she felt the weight of its meaning, a connection to Riverstone's past and a possible future she had never imagined for herself. Outside, the November wind whispered through the trees, carrying the first hint of winter's approach. As she closed the box and held it to her heart, Eleanor wondered what her grandmother would advise if she could see her now. A mail-order bride who never reached her intended husband, instead finding an unexpected home among people she had been. Taught to consider foreign and strange, the answer came to her with surprising clarity. Follow the path of healing, child. It will lead you where you're meant to be. The first snow fell over Fox Crossing 2 days after Riverstone's proposal. Blanketing the settlement in pristine white, Eleanor watched through her cabin window as her daughters experienced their first real snowfall. Their identical faces alight with wonder as they caught flakes on mittens knitted by white dove. "Mama! It's like the sky is falling. But it's beautiful," exclaimed Mercy, always the most exuberant of the four. "Can we live here forever?" asked Margaret, typically the most cautious, "even when the snow is gone?" The innocent question brought Eleanor's pending decision into sharp focus. She had spent the past 2 days in careful consideration, weighing practical concerns against emotional ones, examining her growing feelings for Riverstone against her fears of entering a cross-cultural marriage. "Would you like that?" Eleanor asked, kneeling to her daughter's level. "To stay here permanently, to become part of the Cherokee community." The quadruplets exchanged glances, that mysterious silent communication they had shared since infancy passing between them. Mary, the oldest by minutes and often their spokesperson, answered, "We belong here, Mama. The other children don't stare at us like we're strange. Mrs. White Dove tells us being 4 is special, not something to whisper about." "And Chief Riverstone is nice," added Martha shyly. "He listens when we talk, not like the men in Pennsylvania who acted like we were invisible." Eleanor hugged her daughters close, their simple wisdom clarifying what her own heart already knew. "Then I have something important to ask you," she said. "Chief Riverstone has invited us to share his home for the winter. It's warmer than our cabin, with more room for all of us." She paused, carefully choosing words appropriate for 5-year-olds. "He has also asked if we might consider becoming his family, not right away, but after we've lived together for a time and are certain it's what we all want." "Would he be our father?" Mercy asked, her blue eyes wide. Eleanor nodded. "Eventually, yes, and we would become Cherokee, not just visitors here." The girls conferred again with glances and whispers. Then Mary spoke with the solemnity of a much older child. "We never had a father before, not a real one who stayed. Would Chief Riverstone stay?" "Yes," Eleanor assured them, touched by their perceptiveness. "He would. He's a man who keeps his promises." That afternoon, Eleanor sought out Riverstone, finding him supervising the construction of a new smokehouse. Snow continued to fall gently around them as she asked to speak privately. They walked together to the edge of the settlement, where bare trees stood sentinel against the winter-white landscape. "I've spoken with my daughters," Eleanor began, her breath forming clouds in the cold air, "and I've considered your proposal carefully." Riverstone nodded, his expression attentive but giving nothing away. "And your thoughts?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "We would be honored to share your home this winter and to consider the possibility of a more permanent arrangement." She met his gaze directly. "But I have conditions." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I would expect nothing less from a woman of your determination. First, I must continue my healing work alongside Spotted. Fawn, it's not merely an occupation for me, but a calling." "Of course," he agreed immediately. "Your skills benefit our people and neighboring settlements alike. I would never ask you to set aside such important work." "Second," Eleanor continued, "my daughters must continue their education in both Cherokee ways, and the knowledge they would need should they ever choose to live in the white world." Riverstone considered this carefully. A wise precaution. They should be prepared for whichever path they eventually choose. He paused. Hannah could continue their English lessons, and others, including myself, could teach them Cherokee traditions. And finally, Eleanor said, her voice softening slightly, I need your patience. This is not the future I imagined when I came. West, it's better in many ways, but also more complex. I may require time to adjust fully. Riverstone's expression warmed with understanding. The Cherokee way values patience, Eleanor. A good union, like a strong oak, grows slowly but develops deep roots. He extended his hand toward her, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. We will learn each other's hearts in the proper time. Eleanor placed her hand in his, feeling the strength and gentleness in his grip. Then we accept your invitation, Samuel, for the winter, and for whatever path opens before us afterward. The move to Riverstone's home occurred the following day. As the snow continued to accumulate, the chief's dwelling stood somewhat apart from the other cabins, built against a hillside that sheltered it from northern winds. Unlike the squared log cabins common in the settlement, his home was constructed in a traditional Cherokee style, adapted for permanent use, a central log structure with additional rooms extending outward, the whole covered with a steep roof. Designed to shed snow, inside, the space revealed Riverstone's dual nature as both traditional leader and progressive thinker. Cherokee crafts and symbolic items shared space with books in English, maps of the territory, and even a few pieces of furniture that might have graced any settler's home. The central room featured a large hearth where a fire burned steadily, warming the entire structure. This was my mother's home before she moved to her smaller cabin, Riverstone explained as he showed Eleanor and the Quadruplets around. It has housed 3 generations of our family. Eleanor noticed that while the dwelling was meticulously maintained, it had the slightly austere quality of a place occupied by someone living alone. No small feminine touches softened the rooms. No children's possessions cluttered the corners. The girls will sleep here, Riverstone continued, showing them a room with 4 small beds already prepared, evidence of his thoughtful planning. White Dove helped arrange it. The Quadruplets explored their new quarters with excitement, exclaiming, over colorful woven blankets and small carved animals left on each pillow, welcome gifts that immediately made the space feel like their own. And you will have this room, he said to Eleanor, opening a door to a chamber containing a larger bed with a handsome quilt, a small table with a mirror, and a chest for her possessions. My room is across the central hall. You will have privacy, the careful separation of their sleeping quarters underscored the provisional nature of their arrangement, allowing for propriety while they determined whether a deeper union would follow. As they settled into their new home, Eleanor was struck by how naturally Riverstone interacted with her daughters. He showed endless patience answering their curious questions, taught them simple Cherokee words with gentle correction, and treated each girl as an individual despite their identical appearance, something few adults managed. After the children were asleep that first night, Eleanor and Riverstone sat before the central hearth, the flickering fire casting warm light across their faces. A comfortable silence stretched between them until Riverstone spoke. Tomorrow is our winter ceremony, he said, a gathering where we give thanks for the harvest and prepare spiritually for the cold months ahead. Would you and your daughters like to attend? We would, Eleanor replied. Though I'm not familiar with your ceremonies, I wouldn't want to make mistakes that might offend. Riverstone's expression softened. White Dove will guide you. The important thing is not perfect, understanding of every element, but approaching with a respectful heart. He added another log to the fire. Your presence, your family's presence at the ceremony would be significant. It would signal to the community that you are not merely visitors, but becoming part of Fox Crossing. And is that how you see us? Eleanor asked, the intimate setting encouraging directness. As becoming part of your community? I see you as becoming part of its future, he replied thoughtfully. The world is changing, Eleanor. The old ways of complete separation between our peoples cannot continue. Those who can bridge both worlds will help their children navigate what comes next. His gaze met hers across the flickering light. Your daughters might be such bridges, with one foot in each world. The depth of his thinking impressed Eleanor once again. Riverstone was not merely attracted to her as a woman or valuing her healing skills. He saw their potential union as part of a larger adaptation his people needed to survive. And us, she asked softly. Is that how you see what's developing between us as well, as strategic? A rare smile transformed his stern features. The head may recognize strategy, Eleanor, but the heart has its own wisdom. He touched the turquoise necklace she now wore beneath her collar. I would not offer my wife's memory or my home to someone I merely saw as useful. The simple statement, delivered without flowery declarations or dramatic gestures, touched Eleanor deeply. Riverstone's straightforward honesty contrasted sharply with the practiced romantic phrases in Thomas Reynolds' letters, which now seemed hollow in retrospect. I've never been good at this, she admitted, gesturing vaguely between them. After the girl's father left, I focused entirely on survival and raising my daughters. I haven't allowed myself to think about companionship or... She hesitated. Love. Perhaps that is wise, Riverstone observed. The Cherokee believe that true connection grows from shared purpose and mutual respect, not just from the heart's quick flame. He added softly, We have time, Eleanor. Winter is long in these hills. The next morning brought preparations for the winter ceremony. White Dove arrived early to help Eleanor and the quadruplets dress appropriately. For the girls, she brought simple dresses with traditional beadwork at the collars. For Eleanor, a more elaborate outfit, a ribbon skirt in deep blue with silver, accents and a matching top, adorned with subtle symbols of healing and protection. These belong to my youngest daughter, White Dove explained, as she helped Eleanor arrange her hair in a style appropriate for the ceremony. She moved to the Western Cherokee lands with her husband's family years ago. They would honor her to see them worn again. They're beautiful, Eleanor said, touched by the loan of such personal items. I'll treat them with great care. White Dove's weathered hands stilled on Eleanor's shoulder. You should know, she said carefully. There will be those watching. You closely today. Most accept Riverstone's decision to bring you into his home, but some elders worry about preserving our ways. I understand, Eleanor replied. Change is difficult in any community. In my town, widows were expected to either remarry quickly or fade into invisible spinsterhood. My independence unsettled people. The elder's eyes crinkled with approval. You understand more than I expected. She resumed arranging Eleanor's hair. Show respect for the ceremony, but do not try to be Cherokee in all things. Authenticity matters more than perfect imitation. As they prepared to leave for the ceremonial grounds, a circular clearing near the council house, Eleanor felt a flutter of nervousness. This was her first public appearance as Riverstone's provisional partner. The first time the entire community would see them together as a potential family unit. The quadruplets, however, showed no such anxiety. Dressed in their ceremonial clothes, they practically danced with excitement, eager to participate in their first Cherokee tradition. Their enthusiasm steadied Eleanor's nerves, reminding her why she had accepted Riverstone's proposal, not just for herself, but for the rich cultural heritage her daughters could embrace. Riverstone met them at the door, dressed in his own ceremonial attire, buckskin leggings and shirt adorned with symbolic beadwork, a magnificent eagle feather fan in his hand, his long hair braided with strips of red cloth denoting his leadership position. His eyes widened slightly at the sight. Of Eleanor in traditional dress, appreciation evident in his gaze. "You honor us by wearing these," he said simply. "We wish to show respect," Eleanor replied, "and gratitude for the welcome we've received." As they walked together toward the ceremonial grounds, Eleanor felt the weight of eyes upon them. Some curious, some approving, a few still wary. But when Riverstone offered his arm to her, a public acknowledgement of their developing relationship, she accepted it with quiet confidence. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A mail-order bride who never reached her intended destination, 4 little girls who found acceptance in an unexpected place, and a Cherokee chief wise enough to recognize that sometimes the greatest healing comes from bringing different worlds together. Winter transformed the Oklahoma Territory into a study of contrasts. Brilliant white snow against stark blue skies, the dark silhouettes of bare trees, and the warm glow of fires that made Fox Crossing feel like an island of light in a frozen world. For Eleanor and her daughters, the season passed in a progression of discoveries, adjustments, and deepening connections. The Christmas season brought its own challenges and joys. Eleanor had worried her daughters might feel the absence of familiar holiday traditions, but Riverstone surprised them all by returning from a trading journey with small gifts wrapped in colorful cloth, wooden animals carved by his own hands for each girl, with subtle differences that acknowledged their individual personalities. For Mary, a proud eagle. For Martha, a detail-rich fox. For Margaret, a thoughtful owl. And for Mercy, a playful rabbit. "How did you know which animal suited each girl?" Eleanor had asked, amazed at his perceptiveness. Riverstone smiled. "I watched them. The best gifts come from seeing who someone truly is, not who we wish them to be." For Eleanor he had brought something even more precious, paper, ink, and several books on advanced medical treatment. He'd traded valuable furs to obtain from a doctor passing through the territory. "Your knowledge should grow, not remain fixed," he'd explained. "A healer never stops learning." The winter ceremony had marked a turning point in their acceptance by the community. When Eleanor and her quadruplets had joined the sacred circle, following White Dove's guidance through unfamiliar rituals, an elder named Running Bear had initially objected to their presence. The ancient man had risen shakily to his feet, speaking sharply in Cherokee while pointing at the outsiders. Riverstone had listened with respectful attention before responding with measured words in their shared language. Though Eleanor couldn't understand the exchange, she sensed its significance from the tense silence that followed. Finally, Spotted Fawn had stepped forward, adding her own voice to the discussion. She'd removed a medicine pouch from around her neck, one startlingly similar to Eleanor's grandmother's, and held it beside Eleanor's own, speaking passionately while gesturing between the two. The elder had studied the pouches, then Eleanor's face, before nodding slowly and resuming his seat. Later, Riverstone explained, he questioned whether outsiders should participate in sacred ceremonies. I reminded him that knowledge once shared by Cherokee healers returned to us through your hands, completing a circle begun generations ago. And what did Spotted Fawn say? Eleanor had asked. That medicine recognizes medicine, regardless of the hands that carry it, he'd replied with quiet satisfaction. From that day forward, Eleanor and her daughters moved through the settlement with growing confidence, no longer feeling like tentative guests, but as people finding their proper place. Life in Riverstone's home settled into comfortable patterns. The quadruplets thrived under the combined tutelage of Hannah's English lessons and cultural education from various community members. They learned to identify animal tracks in the snow with John Tall Pine, practiced Cherokee songs with White Dove, and absorbed the settlement's history through evening stories told around the central hearth. January brought a week of bitter cold that kept everyone indoors. During this confinement, Riverstone revealed another side of himself, a storyteller of remarkable skill. Each evening, he would gather the girls around the fire and share Cherokee legends, his deep voice rising and falling with the rhythm of tales passed down through generations. The Quadruplets sat spellbound as he told of how animals acquired their distinctive features, how stars found their places in the heavens, and how the first Cherokee emerged from the sacred mounds. "You have a gift with children," Eleanor observed one night after the girls had gone to bed. "Children see truth more clearly than adults," he replied. "They haven't yet learned to doubt the connection between all living things. Your daughters listen with their hearts, not just their ears." When Eleanor asked why he had never had children of his own before his wife's passing, a shadow crossed his face. "Willow Dancer and I tried for many years. The son who lived only hours was our first success after much disappointment." His expression grew distant. "After losing them both, I believed my path would be to lead my people, not to father children." "And now?" Eleanor asked softly. His gaze returned to her, warm with possibility. "Now I wonder if the Creator had different plans for me all along." Eleanor divided her time between working with Spotted Fawn in the Medicine Lodge and establishing her place in Riverstone's household. Though their sleeping quarters remained separate as initially arranged, the emotional distance between them gradually diminished. They shared evening conversations that stretched into the night, discovering common ground in their dedication to their communities, their love of knowledge, and their hopes for a future where Cherokee and white settlers might find more peaceful coexistence. "My father believed such a future was possible," Riverstone told her one snowy evening as they sat before the fire. "He married my mother, a full-blood Cherokee from an ancient lineage, at a time when many traditionalists opposed such unions. But he understood that adaptation has always been the Cherokee way." "Was he accepted?" Eleanor asked, curious about this piece of Riverstone's heritage she hadn't known. "Eventually, through his actions rather than his words. He learned our language perfectly, respected our ceremonies, and fought alongside Cherokee warriors when settlers encroached on our lands." Riverstone's expression softened with memory. "When the removal came, what your people call the Trail of Tears, he walked every step with his Cherokee family rather than claim exemption through his white heritage." The revelation of Riverstone's mixed ancestry explained much about his unique perspective, his ability to move between worlds while remaining firmly rooted in Cherokee traditions and leadership. As January yielded to February, their provisional arrangement underwent its first serious test. A brutal snowstorm isolated Fox Crossing for nearly a week, forcing the entire community to draw closer together for survival. During those challenging days, Eleanor worked alongside Riverstone as a partner in truth, not merely in name, organizing food distribution, treating frostbite cases with Spotted Fawn, and ensuring the most vulnerable members of the settlement remained warm and fed. The crisis revealed Eleanor's leadership abilities in ways that impressed even the most skeptical elders. When supplies ran dangerously low, she devised a rationing system that ensured fair distribution with special attention to children and the elderly. When cabin fever threatened to spark conflicts, she organized storytelling circles, communal crafting, and games that kept spirits high despite the confinement. One afternoon, she overheard two elders speaking in Cherokee, not realizing she had begun to understand basic phrases. "The white woman has a Cherokee spirit," one said to the other. "Riverstone chose wisely," came the reply. "She strengthens our people." The simple exchange, not meant for her ears, touched Eleanor deeply. For the first time since arriving in Oklahoma Territory, she felt truly seen, not as an oddity or an outsider, but as someone who contributed genuine value to the community. Late one night, after checking on an elderly couple whose roof had partially collapsed under the snow's weight, they returned exhausted to find White Dove had settled all 4 girls into a single bed to conserve warmth, the children sleeping peacefully in a tangle of identical limbs. "You should rest," Riverstone said, noticing Eleanor's fatigue. "Tomorrow will bring more challenges." "As should you," she replied. "You've barely slept these past 3 days." Their eyes met in the dim light of the single lamp, mutual concern reflecting between them. Something shifted in that moment, the careful boundaries they had maintained giving way to a more essential truth. Without speaking, Eleanor moved closer, reaching up to touch his face with gentle fingers, tracing the line of weariness etched beside his mouth. Riverstone captured her hand, pressing her palm against his cheek in a gesture more intimate than any they had shared before. "Eleanor," he said softly, her name both a question and an answer. Their first kiss came naturally, without fanfare or hesitation, a meeting of equals who had moved beyond tentative exploration to genuine partnership. When they separated, Eleanor felt a sense of rightness that transcended cultural differences and complicated circumstances. "I believe I'm falling in love with you, Samuel Riverstone," she whispered, the admission both frightening and freeing. "Not as an escape from hardship or a solution to practical problems, but for the man you are." His arms tightened around her. "And I with you, Eleanor Blackwood. Not as a bridge between worlds or a mother for a future family, but for your courage, wisdom and healing heart." The storm eventually passed, leaving Fox Crossing transformed by massive drifts and crystalline beauty. As the community emerged to assess damage and clear paths, a new clarity existed between Eleanor and Riverstone. An unspoken understanding that their arrangement had evolved from provisional to permanent in intention, if not yet in formal declaration. February brought new challenges. A bout of winter illness that swept through the settlement, testing Eleanor and Spotted Fawn's combined medical knowledge. Working in seamless partnership, they created remedies that incorporated both traditional Cherokee herbs and Eleanor's pharmacological understanding. Several cases that might have proven fatal in previous winters responded to their innovative treatments. "We save more lives together than either could alone," Spotted Fawn observed one evening as they prepared medicines. "This is how knowledge should grow, not one tradition conquering another, but each strengthening where the other has weakness." The philosophy resonated deeply with Eleanor, who had always believed that healing transcended cultural boundaries. "My grandmother would have loved to meet you," she told the Cherokee healer. "You remind me of her, practical wisdom combined with spiritual insight." Spotted Fawn smiled, the rare expression transforming her usually solemn face. "Perhaps she does meet me through your hands and memories." The circle of knowledge continues. As February waned, Riverstone took the Quadruplets on their first ice fishing expedition, teaching them how to cut holes in the frozen creek and wait patiently for their catch. Eleanor watched from the bank, her heart full as she observed the easy rapport between her daughters and the man who was becoming their father in every meaningful way. That evening, after the girls had fallen asleep exhausted from their adventure, Riverstone presented Eleanor with a carved wooden box containing delicate bone fishing hooks sized for small hands. "For next winter," he explained, "when they will be ready to fish on their own." The simple gift, with its assumption of shared futures and continued traditions, moved Eleanor to tears. "You see them so clearly," she whispered, "not just as 4 identical girls, but as individuals growing into their own strengths. And you," Riverstone said softly, taking her hand, "I see you too, Eleanor Blackwood. Your courage, your healing wisdom, your mother's heart that found room for our ways alongside your own." March arrived with hints of thaw, patches of muddy earth appearing beneath receding snow. With the first passable trails came news from the outside world, carried by a half-Cherokee trader named Michael Blackfox, who periodically connected Fox Crossing with other settlements. "Thought you'd want to know," he told Riverstone during a council meeting that Eleanor attended as the settlement's recognized healer. "Thomas Reynolds has continued his campaign against your arrangement." He nodded respectfully to Eleanor. "He's filed another petition with the Indian agent, this time claiming Mrs. Blackwood is being prevented from communicating with authorities." Eleanor's face flushed with anger. "That man's persistence is remarkable, considering he rejected us outright at the station. Pride makes men do foolish things," White Dove observed from her place among the elders, "especially men who believe they own whatever they touch." "There's more," Black Fox continued hesitantly. "He's gathered signatures from prominent citizens demanding that the territorial governor investigate the corruption of white womanhood among the savages." His words, not mine. His expression grew troubled. "And he's specifically mentioned the children, suggesting they're being raised as heathens against their mother's will." A cold fear gripped Eleanor's heart. Throughout American history, children had been removed from homes deemed unsuitable by authorities, often on far flimsier pretexts than a white mother raising her daughters among Cherokee. The Quadruplets had finally found security and acceptance. The thought of them being torn away was unbearable. "What can we do?" she asked, looking from Black Fox to Riverstone. "We could send you away until this passes," one elder suggested pragmatically, "to relatives farther west, beyond territorial jurisdiction." Riverstone shook his head. "Running solves nothing. Reynolds would simply claim his accusations were proven correct." He turned to Eleanor, his expression grave. "There is another option, though it would require accelerating our timeline." Understanding dawned immediately. "Marriage," she said, "a formal, legally recognized union." "Yes," Riverstone confirmed. "A marriage performed by both Cherokee ceremony and Christian ritual, documented by both tribal record and territorial law." He addressed the council. "As a legally married couple, Eleanor's presence here would be her right as my wife, and her daughters would be under my legal protection as their stepfather." The council erupted in discussion, opinions divided on whether formalizing the relationship would diffuse or inflame the situation. Eleanor listened to the debate, her mind racing through implications and possibilities, until she finally stood. "May I speak?" she requested, somewhat unconventionally for a woman in a traditional council. Riverstone nodded, silencing the others with a raised hand. "I came west as a mail-order bride, seeking security through marriage to a stranger," Eleanor began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Fate, or something wiser, intervened when Thomas Reynolds rejected us at the station. What I found, instead of that loveless arrangement, was a community that valued my skills, accepted my children, and offered us genuine belonging." She turned to face Riverstone directly. The question of marriage between us was already moving toward a natural conclusion. Reynolds' threats simply force us to answer it sooner. She took his hand openly before the council. "I would be honored to become your wife, Samuel, not from fear or necessity, but because these months have shown me your true character and heart." A murmur of approval rippled through the council, but Riverstone remained focused entirely on Eleanor. "Are you certain?" he asked quietly. "Marriage in haste." "This is not haste," she interrupted with gentle firmness. "It's recognition of what already exists between us." She squeezed his hand, "and practical protection for our family." 2 weeks later, on the first truly warm day of spring, Eleanor Blackwood became Eleanor Riverstone in a ceremony that embodied the bridging of cultures they represented. Reverend James Taylor, a missionary who maintained relatively respectful relations with the Cherokee, performed a Christian service in the morning. The Quadruplets participated as flower girls, solemnly carrying baskets of early spring blooms, their identical faces composed with the seriousness of children who understood they were part of something momentous. Eleanor wore a dress of ivory, cotton trimmed with Cherokee beadwork that Hannah and White Dove had worked on secretly for weeks, another symbol of the blended traditions she now embodied. Riverstone stood tall in a formal black suit, borrowed from Michael Blackfox, with traditional moccasins and a single eagle feather in his hat that signified his leadership position. When Reverend Taylor pronounced them husband and wife, Eleanor felt no hesitation as she looked into Riverstone's eyes. What had begun as a practical arrangement had blossomed into something neither of them had expected to find, a partnership of equals, a meeting of complementary strengths, and yes, a love that had grown naturally from shared purpose and mutual respect. In the afternoon, a traditional Cherokee wedding took place, Riverstone and Eleanor wrapped in a single blanket, sharing food from a common bowl, and receiving blessings from elders representing the four directions. White Dove presided with dignified joy, formally welcoming Eleanor and the Quadruplets into the Riverstone lineage and the broader Cherokee nation. The territorial authorities were notified through proper channels, marriage documents filed with both tribal records and the territorial registry. Eleanor wrote a clear statement declaring her free and willing consent to the marriage, her decision to raise her daughters within the Cherokee community, and her categorical rejection of Thomas Reynolds' claims. Reynolds's reaction came swiftly, a furious visit to the Indian agent demanding intervention, now on grounds that a white woman had been coerced into marriage with a savage. But the agent, weary of the rancher's escalating demands and faced with legal documentation of a proper marriage, finally dismissed his complaints. "The woman has made her choice, Reynolds," the agent reportedly told him. "Let it go before you make yourself a bigger fool." Whether the rancher would truly abandon his vendetta remained to be seen, but for the moment, Eleanor and her new family had secured legal protection against his most serious threats. Spring brought renewal to Fox Crossing, fresh growth pushing. Through soil warmed by lengthening days, gardens planted with seeds saved from the previous harvest, and children ranging farther as snowmelt revealed the land's awaking bounty. For Eleanor, the season marked a personal blossoming as well. The provisional arrangement that had begun as winter shelter had transformed into a genuine family, the Quadruplets now called Riverstone Father, with natural ease, absorbing Cherokee traditions alongside English education, their identical exteriors housing increasingly distinct personalities shaped by diverse influences and experiences. The first time Mercy had called Riverstone Father, shortly after the wedding, his stoic composure had momentarily shattered. Eleanor had watched, her heart full, as he knelt to the little girl's level, his voice thick with emotion as he replied, "I am honored to be your father, little one." Later that night, he confessed to Eleanor, "I had resigned myself to leading our people, but never having children of my own. To suddenly have 4 daughters, it feels like a gift I don't deserve." "Perhaps," Eleanor had suggested, "it's exactly what you deserve, a family as remarkable and resilient as you are." Their marriage brought changes to Riverstone's home as well. Eleanor's feminine influence softened the previously austere dwelling. With small touches, wildflower arrangements, colorful woven throws, children's artwork displayed proudly on walls, Riverstone added a workshop space where Eleanor could prepare medicines without traveling to the medicine lodge in inclement weather, and built 4 individual sleeping platforms for the Quadruplets as they outgrew sharing space and sought to establish their identities. Eleanor's healing practice flourished as she and Spotted Fawn developed new remedies combining traditions, their partnership drawing patients from both Cherokee settlements and distant homesteads willing to seek help. Across cultural boundaries, word spread of the white medicine woman of Fox Crossing, whose knowledge bridged worlds and whose hands carried healing regardless of a patient's origins. Their peaceful existence faced one final test in early summer, when Thomas Reynolds made a last, desperate attempt to disrupt their life. He arrived at Fox Crossing unannounced, accompanied by 3 hired men with rifles, demanding to see Eleanor and claiming he had evidence she was being held against her will. The confrontation might have turned violent if not for Riverstone's measured response. Rather than meeting threat with threat, he invited Reynolds into the council house to present his grievances formally before the elders and Eleanor herself. If you truly believe she is captive, hear her speak freely before witnesses. Riverstone challenged, his calm authority making Reynolds appear foolish and overwrought in comparison. When Eleanor entered the council house, she carried herself with the dignity of a woman fully comfortable in her position. The quadruplets remained safely, with White Dove unaware of the potential danger. "Mr. Reynolds," Eleanor addressed him directly, "your persistence borders on obsession. I rejected your rejection months ago. I have married according to both Cherokee tradition and territorial law. My daughters are thriving. Your continued interference serves no purpose except to satisfy your wounded pride." Reynolds' face flushed with anger. "You can't possibly prefer living among savages to a proper life with your own kind." "My kind, Mr. Reynolds, are people who value healing, community, and family above property and appearances." Eleanor's voice remained steady. "Riverstone sees my daughters as blessings, not burdens. He values my knowledge, rather than expecting me to hide it. The Cherokee have welcomed us as family, not oddities to be tolerated." The simple truth of her words seemed to finally penetrate Reynolds' obstinance. He looked around the council house, taking in the dignified elders, the evidence of an organized society with its own laws and governance, and finally at Eleanor herself, healthy, well-dressed, and clearly speaking of her own free will. "You've made your choice then," he said flatly. "I have," Eleanor confirmed, "and I would appreciate you respecting it, as the territorial authorities have already done." Whether it was Eleanor's dignified certainty, the intimidating presence of Cherokee warriors discreetly positioned around the settlement, or simply the realization that his crusade had become absurd even to himself, Reynolds departed without further incident. As his party rode away, Riverstone placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "That took courage," he said quietly. "Not as much as you might think," she replied. "It's easy to speak truth when you're standing on solid ground." On a particularly beautiful April evening, Eleanor and Riverstone stood together watching their daughters play with other children in the settlement's central clearing. Mary led a complicated game involving hoops and sticks, her natural leadership emerging. Martha worked carefully on a small clay pot under an elder's guidance, her artistic talents flourishing. Margaret sat slightly apart, observing everything, with thoughtful eyes, while reading a book Riverstone had given her. And Mercy darted between groups, her infectious laughter drawing others into her orbit. "They belong here completely," Eleanor observed with quiet wonder. "As if they were always meant to find this place." Riverstone's arm settled around her shoulders, the gesture now familiar and comforting. Perhaps they were. The Cherokee believed that souls sometimes know their true home before the mind recognizes it. Eleanor leaned against him, contemplating the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. "When Thomas Reynolds rejected us at that station, I thought my carefully laid plans had crumbled to nothing. I couldn't see that rejection was actually redirecting us toward something better. The path that appears blocked often leads to the door that should open." Riverstone said, wisdom inherited from generations before him evident in his words. As twilight deepened around Fox Crossing, Eleanor reflected on the mail-order bride advertisement that had first brought her west, its promises of security and respectability that had seemed so important when she penned her response. What she had found instead was something far more precious. Not just shelter and acceptance, but genuine community, meaningful work, and love that grew from shared purpose rather than convenience. Her daughters would grow up straddling two worlds, carrying within them the resilience of their challenging beginnings and the strength of their Cherokee upbringing. They would face difficulties, prejudice from both sides, complex questions of identity, and the continuing pressures on native lands and traditions, but they would face these challenges as part of a community that valued their unique spirits. "What are you thinking?" Riverstone asked, noting her contemplative expression. Eleanor smiled, watching as White Dove gathered the children for an evening story, the quadruplets settling eagerly at the elders' feet alongside their Cherokee playmates. Eleanor smiled, watching as White Dove gathered the children for an evening story, the quadruplets settling eagerly at the elders' feet alongside their Cherokee playmates. "I'm thinking that sometimes the greatest healing comes in unexpected forms," she replied, "and that 4 identical little girls and a mail-order bride rejected at a train station might have been exactly what Fox Crossing needed all along." Riverstone's rare, full smile transformed his solemn features. "And exactly what I needed, though I didn't know to look for it." He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Welcome home, Eleanor Riverstone. May your healing touch continue to mend what was broken in our people, in your daughters, and in my heart." Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Eleanor sat at the small desk Riverstone had built for her, writing in the journal she had maintained since their arrival. Her entries had evolved from anxious questions about their uncertain future to reflections on the life they had built together. "1 year ago today," she wrote, "I boarded a train in Pennsylvania, clutching 4 tired little girls and a mail-order bride advertisement that promised security and respectability. I believed salvation lay in conforming to expectations, finding a man who would tolerate my circumstances in exchange for my domestic services." She paused, dipping her pen in ink before continuing. "Instead, I found a man who sees my differences, has strengths my daughters as blessings, and my healing work as a calling. I found a community where 4 identical girls can develop as individuals while still sharing an unbreakable bond. I found purpose that extends beyond mere survival. The greatest irony," she added, "is that Thomas Reynolds' rejection, which felt like disaster at the time, was actually the moment our true path opened before us. Sometimes the closed door is the greatest blessing of all." When she finished writing, Eleanor joined Riverstone on the porch, where he sat watching the moon rise over Fox Crossing. He lifted his arm, and she settled against him, their bodies fitting together with the comfortable familiarity of those who have found their rightful place beside each other. "What will you teach the girls tomorrow?" she asked, knowing he had planned a special outing. "How to find medicine plants in the high meadow," he replied. "They're old enough now to learn which leaves heal and which harm." He chuckled softly. "Though I suspect they'll teach me as much as I teach them. Your daughters have keen eyes and quick minds." "Our daughters," Eleanor corrected gently. Riverstone's arm tightened around her. "Our daughters," he agreed, the simple acknowledgement containing worlds of meaning. As stars appeared in the darkening sky above them, Eleanor silently thanked whatever fate, providence, or ancestral wisdom had guided her to this unexpected destination, not as a mail-order bride to a stranger, but as a healer, mother, and beloved partner in a world where her true gifts could flourish. Sometimes, she reflected, the path we fear most leads us exactly where we're meant to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.